Hi, this is Regina Y. Favors coming to you with a rebound relationship series titled Understanding Relationship Failure 10 Reasons. This is going to be a collective lecture, and it is divided into multiple videos. So, you will need to listen to the first part, the second, the third, and so on. So, understanding relationship failure is important because if you don't take the time to self assess what went wrong with the relationship, you are doomed to repeat the same types of mistakes. Understanding relationship failure also points to the fact that most relationships fail oftentimes with our contribution, but it could also be that you just really chose the wrong person, or the person was just not ready to be in relationship, or the person could have chosen you as maybe a fallback plan until they were able to marry someone else. So I want you to take some time to listen to the full series. If you have any questions, please leave a comment and I will respond. Also, take some time to hit the subscription button and then hit the notification bell if you are interested in further videos. Thank you for visiting the channel. So this lecture is subject to fair use. So I will be commenting, criticizing, teaching, and pursuing scholarship using this lecture. Reason number 10, part of identity. So perception of individual and social role. All right, so there are different types of identities. We have a regular social identity based upon categories and groups, and then we have our own role identity that we sort of we mechanically operate under, right? So social identity theory, categories or groups. The self is reflective. It can take on itself as an object and can categorize, classify, and name itself in relation to other social categories. This is called self-categorization. A person has knowledge that he or she belongs to a social category or group. Through self-categorization, people notice their similarities and differences between in-group and out-group persons, respectively. So you can look at social identity in terms of racial, ethnic identity as well. You can look at it just simply as gender, identity. So we have all females here, we have all males here. Now we basically have a category for transgender, social identities. And so we can also look at it again on race, right? So we have all black people over here, we have all white people over here. So all the black people within their social category or group know each other. We know that we're black, right? And then anyone who does not look like black in terms of skin tone or in terms of just racial, ethnic identity, they would be perceived as out-group, right? You have people who are black in other countries that their skin tone tells us that they are black, but they may be Cuban, they may be Dominican, they may be Spaniard, from a different country, French, right? Then we have identity theory in terms of roles. So through self-categorization and identity is formed, and that identity in terms of roles would be how we function within the dynamic of a social category or group. Social categories precede individuals. So it is kind of interesting that when the doctor delivers the child, the infant, the doctor does not say, okay, you have a black girl, you have a black baby, you have a white baby. No, the doctor says you have a girl, you have a boy, right? But once we leave the womb and we enter into society, we enter into a society that is already structured, economically, financially, socially, ethnically, racially, right? So individuals are born into an already structured society. Once in society, people derive their identity or sense of self largely from the social categories to which they belong. So there is a sense of self within your own ethnic group or within your own gender-based group. And then there is a sense of self that you hold for your own identity. So similar to social identity theory reflects the components of a structured society. As these authors suggest, in identity theory, the core of an identity is the categorization of the self as an occupant of a role and the incorporation into the self of the meanings and expectations associated with that role and its performance. You can always look at that in terms of, say, the social category of a family dynamic. So everyone occupies a role. I am the oldest daughter. I am also the oldest sibling. And then I have two siblings under me. And then there's the middle child. So there's psychology research on the oldest child, and then there's a lot of psychology research on the middle child. That person is serving in the middle between two siblings, right? And that person functions as a middle child, and then I function as the oldest child. So when we look at social identity theory in contrast to identity theory, we think about group formations, right? So this social identity theory deals with intergroup relations based upon what one becomes as an in-group member, being like others in a group, seeing things from the group perspective. So I was on student government council at my college. And so there's a way that you function as part of a member on student government. You could be a member, or you could be a group that is representing as a member on the council, right? So there's intergroup relations based upon what one becomes as an in-group member. So I'm part of an in-group, the larger student government council, and then once I leave that larger student government council, I go to an individual group. That could be any type of, it could be a cultural group, it could be another functioning type of group. And then being like others in a group, seeing things from the group perspective. So I'm going to end up holding two types of perspectives. I'm going to hold a perspective as being part of a student government council member, and then I'm going to hold a perspective as being part of a group club member as well. And then identity theory deals with role identity, acting, fulfilling a role, coordinating actions with role partners, manipulating the environment to control the resources on the role. You can look at this still from the student government aspect or the family dynamic. So if we look at it from the student government aspect, once I leave the council and I get into a group club member or something like that, I'm going to also have an individual role. So I can still serve as member, but I can also serve as parliamentarian. I can serve as the president of that group, the vice president, any sort of type of function that club offers, right? If you look at the family dynamic, each of us still has an identity within the larger social identity of the family. So we all have chores that we have to complete, right? I wash the dishes, my brother sweep the floor, right? And another sibling takes out the trash. So we're all coordinating actions, and we are all up under the larger parental guiding force, right? There are expectations. By the time mom gets home, we should have already had X amount of things done, right? But then what happens when one sibling decides that he or she does not want to take out the trash? Then there's a lack of coordination. So now that person is not acting in his or her role. That person has abandoned their role, their the function that they're supposed to do on that particular day, right? And then what happens with that person who decides not to wash the dishes or something like that, or sweep the floor, they begin to manipulate the environment to control the resources under the role after they've been punished. So mom comes home, she sees the trash is not taken out, she gets upset, and she puts that one sibling on punishment. Okay, that person can't watch TV. Well, the person can be in their room, but the TV is still going on. Okay, the person is mad and everything, and it's not fair or whatever. And then he does this again, and then this time there's the parent says or realizes that he can still hear the TV. So even though he's not watching the TV with his eyes, he can still hear it. And so the parent comes out and says, you know what, all of y'all gonna be on punishment. Turn off that TV. So now he has manipulated the environment to control the resources. So the TV is no longer a resource for us, because now he has created a situation under his role using lack of coordination. All right, so these authors concluded that individuals who identify with the group feel a strong attraction to the group as a whole, independent of individual attachments. So you see this a lot with a lot of the protest movements and protests and movements, right? Everyone is sort of what the politicians are saying and the media are saying. They are all becoming tribal. So now they identify with, say, Black Lives Matter, or they identify with Time's Up, or they identify with Me Too. Then you have KKK, and then you have the neo-Nazis, right? And irrespective of individual attachments, they feel a strong attraction to the group. That is something in that group that is pulling them like a force to join it, right? These authors concluded under identity theory that by taking on a role identity, persons adopt self-meanings and expectations to accompany the role as it relates to other roles in the group, and then act to represent and preserve these meanings and expectations. So if we go back to the example of the student government, we all know that on any sort of board or membership or anything like that, there is always a parliamentarian. And the parliamentarian is following the Robert's Rules of Order. And it's the parliamentarian that feels like they are responsible for keeping order, right? That's their role. They are like that, right? So initially they may sign up to be parliamentarian and come to fulfill that as a role identity within the group. But then once they realize they have a lot of power being parliamentarian, in the fact that that they have to keep order, so anyone who gets out of line, that they can use Robert's Rules of Order to sort of get everybody in line, they begin to feel importance from that. So then that basically extends to them adopting self-meaning, that I am important because of the role that I fulfilled. And so any challenge to that role, like someone coming along and saying, man, it don't take all of that, man, take just be cool, it's not that serious. Well, you have to keep the minutes, you have to keep order, you have to have a report. So the person can reply, yes, it is important, I'm the parliamentarian. So they will act also to preserve the meaning of what a parliamentarian is and what role identity is in terms of their identity, and then in terms of the larger social identity. So social identity, the group is seen as a collective of similar persons. They identify with each other. In-group members hold similar views and see themselves as similar in contrast to out-group. So, I mean, if you are in a room full of Black people, you all know that you are Black. If you are in a room filled with white people, you all identify with each other. You are seen as a collective of similar persons. You could also be a collective of of similar persons attending a business and networking event. You are all business people. Or you can be a collective of similar persons visiting a job fair. You are all looking for work, right? And then identity theory, the group is seen as a set of interrelated individuals. The role identity is an expression of interconnected uniqueness. Relations are reciprocal under identity theory. They are not parallel. So again, if you look at the student government context, in the larger group, I mean, in the club, you have members who are the group is seen as a set of interrelated individuals, that you are part of this one club and you are all, say, like the finance club. You know, you have interrelated goals, right? You are using the club as to put it on your resume and also to learn and network, okay? And then relations are reciprocal, that in certain contexts, if you do this for me, I do this for you, but they're not parallel. People are tied organically to their groups through social identities. They are tied mechanically through their role identities within groups. So it's automatic that it's organic that you are tied to a particular social identity. Like I said, you are all part of one race, or you are all part of one family dynamic, or you are all part of one student government. But what you do within that group is more mechanical, because now you are functioning within the group, and when you are out, when you don't function, it becomes less mechanical. But how does the person act within the group beyond self-categorization? The better word is enact, not act. And if you think about enact, you think about it in terms of legislating, right? You are legislating your identity, or your the social identity theory in the social group or category is legislating how you should act, right? What identity does a person enact as a result of being in a group and or fulfilling a role within that group? So now we're talking about the person identity. The person identity. So remember, we were discussing the social identity and then the role identity. Now we're going to get into the person identity. And remember the parliamentarian as I go through this. The person identity is conceptualized as similarly to both identity theory and social identity theory. The person identity is the set of meanings that are tied to and sustain the self as an individual. These self meanings operate across various roles and situations. This means that there may be overlap between personal identity and role identity. An example would be masculine gender or role identity, but mastery in terms of person identity. The person who suggests he is competent is hinting at mastery. So it's obvious that gender would be related to role identity. This is a female role, this is a male role, right? But mastery is related to sort of like that learning goal orientation I was talking about, that you are pursuing mastery of something. And you are now making the fact that you are parliamentarian of a student government council part of your person identity, that you know the rules. You are a master of the Robert's Rules of Order book, right? And you know when someone is getting out of line. So this is now becoming part of your person identity, and you will more than likely go into other areas of your career where you are responsible for adhering to rules and regulations, because you tend to be a master of it. You have to be a master of Robert's Rules of Order because it's very easy to get out of line within a larger group of 50 plus members. You know, and you still have to be able to submit a report officially to the board, to the, to the university, to the faculty or whatever. And so you have to have order. And so the fact that you have taken it on as a role and now you give it even more significance, and that it now becomes part of your person identity is significant. It is you on the road to mastery. When does an identity become activated? How much does commitment to the identity affect the social, the role, and the person? So if you think about the parliamentarian, the person is not just taking a job just to take the job, that they are committed to being parliamentarian for however long, right? The activation of an identity in a situation allows individuals to accomplish their personal and or social goals. The source of such activation is left to individual and situational variability and apparently does not depend on social structural characteristics. So the source of such activation is left to individual and situational variability. So when you start believing that the parliamentarian role has become part of your personal identity, you activate it, right? Then it is based upon your individual beliefs about it and then the situational variability. So it may not be situational for you to do it outside of that larger social group of student government. That people at the house don't want you to be a parliamentarian. All the roommates that you have are going to be upset with you when you try to be a parliamentarian at the house. It is only applicable to a particular context, situational variability, meaning that within the context of that student government meeting is where you want to be a parliamentarian. You won't be a parliamentarian when you go to the president's office. To the student government president's office. You're not taking minutes. You're just going for a meeting. And anyway, usually there's a secretary who takes minutes. So it's not for you to operate or administer Robert's Rules of Order within that individual meeting, because there is a secretary who has to fulfill his or her role in that way. Activation of an identity requires commitment to that identity. So according to these authors, commitment has two aspects. So you have quantitative and qualitative. The number of persons to whom one is tied through an identity. So in terms of parliamentarian, right, if we think about that, the parliamentarian is tied to the administrator people. So that's the president, vice president, anyone else, right? And the parliamentarian is tied to the council, the student government council, where everyone meets, right? But the parliamentarian is not tied to the individual clubs and groups, right? Only if they are requested to do so. And then qualitative, the strength or depth of ties to others through an identity. There is more depth and strength of the parliamentarian tied to the administrators and to the larger student government body than to the individual group members. Commitment to the identity requires, however, depersonalization, which is defined as seeing the self as an embodiment of the in-group under social identity theory. So we are all under this sort of one group. It could be a race-based group. It could be a gang. It can be any type of collection of individuals that are calling themselves a group, right? So the longer you stay in the group, the less you have in terms of personality. You may fulfill a role and give that role significance, but you are now part of the group. When you see a gang of Crips and Bloods, or a gang of KKK or neo-Nazi, or even the people who walk in the protest movements and things like that, we don't look at them as individuals anymore. We look at them as an embodiment of the in-group. So anyone who is on the sidelines watching the protest movements, the people in the protest movement walk the streets, we are considered that out-group. We are not the embodiment of the in-group if we're sitting down and not walking with them. So commitment to the identity also requires self-verification, seeing the self in terms of the role as embodied in the identity standard. So if we're looking at it at a gang, the identity standard is usually blood in and blood out, right? That if you want to get out, it's blood out. But you're not going to wake up all of a sudden and say, I know I'm going to put in my resignation, I'm leaving the game. No. The identity standard is once you are in, you are in. You are part of our game, right? So then you self verify. And that's really meaning that the longer you stay in that game, the longer you verify that you are part of that game, right? When the identity is activated, self verification occurs. The person behaves in a way that maintains consistency with the identity standard. So you don't have off days. Only the leader could take off, right? But if you're going to go out and do something, whatever it is you're going to do as a group, the identity standard is we all stick together. We don't. If you think about Navy SEALs, their motto is, or their identity standard, as a group, and then individually, everyone self verifies. We don't leave our men behind, right? The identity standard is we don't leave our men behind. So then it's up to you individually to self-verify. Every time you see your man left behind, you go after him like Forrest Gump did with Bubba, right? I have to go back and get Bubba, right? And so because he was part of a larger identity standard. Depersonalization involves social stereotyping, group cohesiveness, ethnocentrism, and collective action. Self-verification involves role-taking, role-making, and group formation. So if you look at depersonalization involving social stereotyping, it's like we know of this one group as being this one group. Never mind that the individual people within the one group are successful and doing well and are not criminals. But we will take this one group of people, it could be Black, Asian, Latino, right? And we will take this one group of people and socially stereotype that group as if all the people in that group are crime types of people or lazy types of people, right? And we are essentially depersonalizing them. You can say that about how men see women, calling them sluts and whores. You can say that how women see each other, calling themselves bitches, right? We are, socially stereotyping, and we're basically, taking collective action, right? The processes of depersonalization and self-verification show us that membership in any social group or role includes two important aspects. One's identification with a category and behaviors that we associate with the category. So your behavior does dictate how long you stay within a particular type of role. All right, so now that we have an understanding of identity theory, social identity theory, person identity, commitment, depersonalization, and self-verification, then how do these concepts apply to why a partner might choose to marry someone else? And it goes back to what I was talking about in procrastination, that some people are not just lifelong learners, that they will perform a role within a relationship but not attach any real meaning to their role performance. So role performance is at the center of individual decisions to marry someone else. And this is sort of key to my situation with my ex, the first part of this third bullet point. So a romantic partner may feel obligated to perform a duty to another partner or a previous partner for whatever reason. So my ex would always go running to his ex when she used the word or told him that he had a duty to her. Never mind, they were never married. They had just lived together, and I had met him once he was out of her house. And she said they were not together anymore. He said they were not together anymore. But when she said, "You have a duty to me," he went running. And I don't know if that duty that he felt or she said is linked to something in his childhood, some person. The person that he was with might look like another person who said the exact same thing. It could be a parent. It could be a teacher. I don't know, right? But when she used that word, you have a duty. Now, never mind, she had moved to somewhere else. She didn't tell him the address of the new location. They met in other types of places, right? But when she said, you have a duty to me, he went running. Whatever he was doing, he stopped, right? And then, however, one reason might be gender-based, especially if it is a man socially required to marry a woman. So if we're talking about role performance, then it could be a expectation, a social expectation that requires him to perform a role. So social expectations affect role performance. For example, there are class expectations where an upper class member will marry an upper class member. You see this a lot in old money, where old money people marry old money people. Sometimes there's a lot of criticism when the old money person wants to marry a new money person, right? So they tend, in certain elite upper class elitist environments, you would never really see them marrying below their economic and social stations. Then there may be race-based expectations, so Indians marrying within their race. So people who come from India, you hardly ever see them marry anyone else other than Indian, right? That if there is an Indian woman who marries someone who is not Indian, the parent will usually say that the woman can only marry a white man, right? But you hardly ever see them marry a black person, a person from like China, Japanese, right, or Latino. I've never seen that happen. Whoever they marry, if they are Indian, it's either you marry another Indian or you marry a white person. There may be mate value implications. So again, anything that affects role performance could be class, race-based, and mate value. So a man would always be expected to marry a woman who he rates as 9 or 10 over a woman who he rates as 7, 8. And this is all based upon how he sees himself, his mate value. And anyway, even if he saw himself as low value, and that's hardly the case with any man, that they will always push for a 9, 10 over a woman they rate as a 7 or 8. So Stryker concluded that the self is an active creator of social behavior in relationships. For example, in the case of marrying a 9, 10 over 7, 8, it is a social expectation that the man is actually complicit in creating, developing, and perpetrating. So you see this a lot in there's like a group consensus with men that you always pick a woman who is sort of like high status, high value, 9 or 10. You'll see this a lot in terms of men calling women a dime piece, right? And if the woman that they're calling a 9, 10 or rating a 9, 10, everyone else basically is essentially a 7, 8. So this belief system that a 9, 10 is more valuable than a 7, 8 is further socially accepted among both men and women. Women will co-create and perpetuate behavior that they believe reflects what a 9, 10 looks like, what a 9, 10 does, and what a 9, 10 is expected to do to gain the view of a high-value mating partner. So women study other women. They study also what men want. That's why you'll see women that only go after ballers look a certain way. They don't look like the baller's mother. They look very young. They tend to dress a certain way. They tend to, they are always fit, or I won't say fit, they could just have the body. They can have a little bit of curves or something like that, but they tend to sort of create themselves to look a certain kind of way. And a lot of times you'll see people, their older pictures, they looked one way, and then you see them today and it's like two different types of people. Now, I'm interested in reinventing myself. I had a lot of stressful events over the course of my lifespan, and so I've gained weight. And what I want to do is work on me and improve me. It's not for a man, however. It's just to improve the presentation of me. I like me for who I am today, and I don't have to rate myself as 9, 10, or 7, 8 or something like that. But there are some things as I age, as I realized in terms of age, that I want to change. I want to lose, certain pounds or whatever, and I want to have a little bit of a fashion sense to myself. But I'm not looking to perpetuate what a 9-10 looks like, what a 9-10 does, what a 9-10 is expected to do to gain the view of a high-value mating partner. I already consider myself that is my self-perceived value, and I don't need to argue that. I don't need to negotiate that. I don't need to trade that. I just believe what I believe for myself. You don't have to believe that about me. That's fine. You can see me as a 7-8 all day if you want to. That means that I will not marry you, because if you see me as a 7-8, you're going to really treat me as a 5-6, and I don't want that. A high value male partner would definitely attempt every effort to close the deal with the 9-10, because he perceives her as high value, a projection of his own self-perceived value. So, high value mates, it depends. If you are a high value male partner in terms of your economy, you make a lot of money, you may fall on the new money, right? And then you see a high value woman, female, who is part of a name, right? You will do all that you can to try to close that deal, because you see the networking opportunities. I'm not saying you don't love the partner, but you see the benefits that you could gain as a result of being with that person. Attractiveness and access to high value mates are indicative of one's own mate value. So that's individuals' overall attractiveness as a potential mate on the mating market. So how you perceive yourself relative to other people on the mating market, and then of course how others perceive you relative to mates on the mating market as well. For a man, a woman's mate value is predicated on her physical attractiveness. It is his role identity and social identity to conform to global measures of attractiveness. So this is key to pay attention to, because global measures of attractiveness from both the U.S. viewpoint and other countries' viewpoint is the blonde hair, blue-eyed woman is at the top of the heap. I don't care if you have tons of beautiful women in other countries. The way that the world looks at measures of attractiveness is based upon the blonde hair, white blonde hair, blue-eyed woman. She has to meet those 3 characteristics, right? So then what right up under her would be the brunette. And the brunette could look prettier than the blonde. But it's the blonde, then the brunette, then the redhead type person, right? That's the global measure of attractiveness. Even though in other races you could have more beautiful people that can look lovely or whatever, they don't see it that way. A high-value female partner would be less likely to marry a low-value male partner who cannot provide or offer benefit provisioning. It's funny that even if the high-value female partner married the man, the fact that his economy is not at the same level as hers will lead her to eventually want to upgrade him. She might marry him. He might come from a name, but he might be the lesser of the men in the family and not have the same kind of high status. The high status son, the oldest son, might already be married to someone. So the high value female partner would find him less attractive, even if he came from a name. If she is in an unmarried relationship, she may create a walkaway strategy by exiting one mateship for another, and she may cultivate a backup mate. So while she is in a relationship with the low value male partner, like I said, she's always on the hunt. So therefore, she's going to go to family outings, family dinners, events, things like that. And subconsciously, she's going to eye the room to see who could become a backup mate that she can later convert to long term. If she had married the low value partner, as these two authors concluded, she might implement an affair as a form of mate insurance, keeping a backup mate in tow should a switch become warranted at some point in the future. You know, I never understood people and why they feel like they have to cultivate, a backup mate. Why don't you just leave the partner? Why hold on to the partner like at arm's length, pushing the partner away, and then when it's convenient, you pull at the partner to come back? If you want somebody else, just get somebody else. Leave the partner, have the courage, take the risk, and divorce, and then or break up and then go. Why have a partner and then cultivate a backup partner? I've never understood that. A low value male partner may resort to cost inflicting behaviors to prevent partner defection from the relationship. So that basically means he doesn't want that partner. That the low value male partner, in contrast to his low value female partner, he considers really a 5'6". I'm not going to say that he's going to call himself a low value male, but if he's rating his partner as low value, then she is not necessarily a 7'8". She's a 5'6". So he's going to treat her like she's a 5'6". That means cost inflicting behaviors could be jealousy, monopolizing the partner's time, messing with her self-esteem, right? Such behaviors might include manipulation, intimidation, possessiveness. In contrast, a man of higher mate value would be more likely to exercise mate retention behaviors to remain invested in the relationship. However, a man of lower mate value would inflict costs for not remaining invested. So the man of higher mate value who would exercise mate retention behaviors to remain invested this higher mate value doesn't necessarily need to be a person who comes from name. The person could represent new money. He pulled himself up by his bootstraps, built a company, and now he's rich, right? But he would exercise mate retention behaviors if the woman he was interested in comes from name, comes from one of these big brand names or whatever, because he would care enough to retain that mate, knowing that if he stays in good with her father, it would increase opportunities in terms of business for him. And if he doesn't, it's going to decrease opportunities. So he's going to do more benefit provisioning. He's going to give her everything she wants. He's essentially going to become her new father in a sense, right? However, a man of lower mate value would inflict costs for not remaining. So here it is, the man is messing with the self-esteem of his mate, of his partner, and she decides to leave the relationship. So then his cost-inflicting behaviors would be, I'm going to take you for everything you got, or I'm going to take the kids, I'm not going to give you, financial support or something like that. Another role identity and social identity question surrounds marrying a rebound. So it is a social group consensus among men and women alike. No one marries their rebound. Rebounding is considered a short-term mating strategy. As these two authors conclude, following a breakup, people will often lower their expectations of a potential mate. So, it's rare that you see a person marry their rebound. I don't think I've ever seen that happen. Now, I'm not saying a person wouldn't marry you for convenience. See, there's a difference between marrying you and marrying you for convenience, for, rebounding. But even then, I was the rebound of my ex, and he never married me. Even though he kind of promised that he would, or played around like he did or whatever, when he decided that he was going to marry, he married someone else. Not even the ex who said that he had a duty to her. He didn't even marry her. Now, he's still not the marrying kind, because even in a relationship that he's in right now, there have been reports of him cheating, right? But he still did not marry me, right? When it comes to rebounding, that is a short-term mating strategy, and people often tend to date down with the rebound. Like their strategy, their mating strategy is to, secure sex. And so they will get into relationships of all kinds, dating rotations, rebounding, anything, so that they have consistent access to sex. But when it comes time for them to actually want to marry, they will switch up their short-term mating strategy and go back to their long-term partner preferences and marry someone under those qualifying criteria. So these authors further conclude that a short-term mating strategy is useful for gaining sexual access to multiple partners and avoiding long-term commitment. Because the loss of a relationship may result in feelings of loss of time and invested resources, an individual might feel compelled to change their mating behavior and effort by choosing a rebound to make up for the time and effort lost to the previous partner. So if you're sitting up in the house and your partner is no longer there, you're bored. You don't know what to do with yourself. Unless you are a loner like myself who can, kind of get along. I don't have to be in a relationship. It is likely for you, especially a man, to leave that house and go to a bar, because you think about the sex aspect before the companionship aspect. So you're more likely to make sure that you don't have any gaps in your sexual access. That's why you have a lot of men who adopt, dating rotations, because every day they know they can get sex from each of those people. They don't have to give them commitment, however. But sex does not suggest commitment. Men in particular will pursue a short-term mating strategy for sexual variety, not letting too much time lapse between the breakup and the potential. Men tend to lower their standards after a breakup when they pursue a short-term mating strategy, focusing their efforts on the potential partner's physical appearance as opposed to qualities necessary for long-term partnership. So again, you will see them, it's funny how sometimes men will marry someone who is more physically attractive just because of the person's physical attractiveness and not necessarily for the qualities necessary for long-term partnership. And one of my PowerPoints that I use under my school, Favors Learning Center on Teachable.com, is alpha males do not win in the end. What I mean by that is that you have to get old. That yes, running around 20s, 30s, 40s, maybe your 50s is okay, but you're going to get to your 60s where it's going to be less easy for you to just run around and sort of do and screw everybody that you can see. That you're going to get sick, you're going to have back pain, you're going to have leg pain, arthritis. And that young person that you have is not going to be necessarily a person who stays with you for the long term. And all the people that you mess over because you think they are 7/8 and not 9/10, like that other partner, you're going to run the risk of losing out on someone who has the qualities necessary for long-term partnership. All right, Shimmick and Bello reported that men often used rebound relationships as coping mechanisms, as distractions from the emotional feelings for an ex-partner. They also used rebound relationships as sources of support, so you see that a lot. Role identity, social identity, and person identity has some kinship to gender socialization. The authors further concluded that men often do not fare well after a breakup, termination from a romantic relationship, and that's true. Men may disagree, but men are really surprised when their relationship breaks up, because I don't know. I think they think rationally that if they are still living in the house with you, that they are with you. Even if they are stepping out and cheating and having sex with their ex or with a new partner, they think that because they are still with you in the house physically, that they are with you. And this is the argument that you might use for the married partner who has a house with the married partner, and then the married partner who has a house with his mistress. And that in both respects, he feels like he is with both of them. But what happens is they are surprised. That married male partner is surprised, or married female partner is surprised when their partner decides to leave and have packed up and left, and they don't understand how that actually happened. Men tend to be more vulnerable, shocked, or upset when relational terminations occur. They have been found to handle the ending of a romantic relationship worse than women, as well as been found to have stronger feelings of sadness, depression, and loneliness. This supports the notion that men tend to fall in love quicker than their female counterparts. They recognize love for their partners sooner than females. In addition, men are not prepared to address emotionally trying situations because of the restrictions of masculinity. So, what men often do in terms of resolving their emotional issues is they go physical. They will either go and have sex with somebody, or they will go and play sports with somebody, right? But they don't sit down and take a pen and pad and journal. That's what women do. And so they will often sort of exacerbate their situation, because then they will go get a rebound, and then they'll get involved with that person, and then that person, like myself, would think they are in a relationship with the person, only for the person to leave and go on, somewhere else. And it would have been better for him to just address the emotionally trying situation. But men are not really socialized to address an emotional situation. Men are socialized not to display feelings of sadness and or emotions judged as feminine, which leaves them unable to deal properly with negative feelings. So, for instance, girls are allowed to be strong and independent, but it is unacceptable for boys to cry or to need assistance from others, therefore confining boys within the restrictions of masculinity. So, if we're all on the playground and some boy comes along and takes a girl's ball, she can cry. She can cry. She can go tell the teacher he hurt me, that type of thing. But if the boy on the playground, if another person takes the ball from him, maybe like a bully, another boy, he can't cry. He can't go and tell the teacher or anything like that, because it will be almost, tantamount to snitching. And so he has to hold it on the inside, what's going on with him in terms of the negative feelings. In a case where a man might marry someone else, addressing issues with conflict might be difficult and might result in the person just simply marrying someone else, because men are socialized not to express themselves through masculinity. So if a man might perceive the situation in terms of a emotionally trying situation as not working, and so instead of looking at the situation as being workable, maybe going through the situation, they see as not working, not functional. So then their mind, in their rational, logical thinking, they're going to look for a relationship that is working and functional. That's why you see a lot of men say that they don't like women with bad attitudes. That even if the person is a dime piece, if they have a bad attitude, a bad mood based upon their personality, they won't date them, right? And so when they see conflict, it's not so much that men run from conflict. That might be true. When they see conflict, they're not socialized to deal with conflict. Even young men in the home with a motherly, with the mother takes over any of the issues, right? The man, the child has, the boy child has. So the child can lay on his mother, cry to his mother, or whatever. Not to the father, of course, but they can do that. But the issues, the mother doesn't teach the child how to resolve the issues, right? The mother might teach the girl how to resolve, but it will be in a maybe sarcastic, mocking way. So you didn't know he was violent like that, and you married him. It'll be in that kind of way. But she's almost trying to get her to resolve the conflict at the same time. Men are socialized as game players or ludists. Ludist is in the psychology research. So there are 3 types of love: eros, storge, and ludist. So there's romantic, passionate love, friendship love, and then game playing love. Ludic individuals tend to view love as a game in which it is ideal to be carefree in the dating scene, be content with more than one partner at a time, and keep relationships at a relatively superficial and non-committal level. So that is the dating scene game. Game playing love allows men to avoid emotional intensity with themselves and with their partners. Women, on the other hand, are pragma lovers, where they seek certain desirable qualities to find an optimal match. So women are not always do not always base their pick of men on physical attractiveness alone, whereas a man would do that. They look at the economy of a person. Does he have a job? What kind of money is he making? What type of job? Can he manage a home? Can he hold us down, right? Now, women do pick men who don't have a job and try to have kids with them and things like that, and then try to convert them as if they are marriage-minded people, but they're not. So then they'll have kids with that person and then turn around and marry someone else who is a quote-unquote good man and make him be the father of their kids. In essence, there are significant gender differences between men and women. So if we look at these differences, we have women who are future-oriented, cautious, trait-oriented. So we're oftentimes looking for the conscientious personality trait in men. That, if you remember the big 5, the neuroticism, extroversion, openness to experience, agreeableness, and then conscientiousness. We're looking more for the conscientious aspect of it. Is he a hard worker? Does he have ambition? We don't want too much ambition if it's going to affect our economy. That means that the woman has to be ambitious herself. But we do look at the future orientation of something than the current orientation of something. Then there's the consciously attend to the relationship. So yes, women tend to have their ears and eyes open, in the relationship. They are able to adjust, prepare, act on feelings of discontentment. Yes, we do, or we are prone to sort of voice our opinion on things, right? Especially if we are unhappy. And then we are aware of the issues in relationship. That means we also recall issues in a relationship. So even if we have resolved something or come to resolve something in a relationship, we will sort of bring them back up later. Men tend to be competitive, less invested, not trait oriented. So the competitive aspect of it then would be, if is kind of linked to the naive aspect in the 3rd bullet point, that if you don't want me, I can get somebody else. That's part of the ludist, the game playing that they give as well, that they do, that they are competitive in this way, that if you can get somebody, I can get somebody, but if you don't want me, I can get somebody. Then they are detached from conscious awareness, so they're not really aware of issues that you might have. You may be exhibiting passive aggressiveness, so you come in, you slam the doors, you do all that kind of stuff to try to get them to see you, but they don't operate in that way. They're more logical. They will come to you and say, this is a problem for me, and if you don't want to solve this problem, then they'll leave. Women tend to take much longer before we exit. Naive about the breakup of the relationship and reasons behind it. So here it is. You've been pushing for marriage. and they don't want to talk about it, and then all of a sudden you have moved your stuff out of the house and they're like shocked that you have moved out. You know, why are you moving out? And you say, well, I want to get married. Okay, when have you been saying that? I've been saying this the whole time, right? And so they, oh, really? Yes, you know, they are detached from the conscious awareness, right? Whereas women, we tend to be aware of the issues and then taken aback by relational termination, issues with emotions. So then you have moved out and they are standing there shocked, like they don't understand why you have moved out. I mean, I thought we were still in a relationship. I'm still in the house with you. So what's the problem, right? Men, in contrast to women, have fewer social networks from which to receive support after a breakup. Women, on the other hand, usually have a sister circle that affords them the opportunity to seek emotional support. Men are less prepared with romantic relationships and therefore less adaptive and equipped for relational termination. So as soon as our man breaks up with us, we have already called our girls. We will go and, you know, visit someone at the house, or we'll have them come over. We'll cry and eat and do all kinds of stuff. We have a whole social network. We can call somebody who is out of town and still get that emotional need addressed, whereas men don't have the same capacity because they haven't been learned in that way. The fathers will tell them don't cry. The mothers will, you know, hug them, right? The uncles will tell them to get all the sex they can, you know. It's a number of different things. Plus their boys would tell them, man, you don't need that hoe, you know, that type of thing. So the more that you jump in and out of relationships, the less prepared you are to deal with a long-term romantic relationship, and the easier it is for you to get out of it and marry, you know, someone else, because you think that in marrying someone else you are being more productive. It is much easier for a woman to seek a short-term mating strategy such as a rebound. For a man to seek a short-term mating strategy such as a rebound than for a woman, since women in general tend to be more selective based upon parental investment. So when women select someone, it is based upon who they want to have kids with, right? But for men, they can dip in and dip out of short-term mating strategies because they know that they don't have to marry that person. However, pursuit of a short-term mating strategy is not a substitute or replacement of a long-term partner characteristic necessary for paternal investment in marriage. So again, they can dip in and out of the dating market, but they know that there has to be a woman that they find that's going to fulfill a long-term partner characteristic, those qualities necessary for long-term partnership, right? When the man is ready to marry, he will shift from short-term to long-term. He will shift from game playing strategies as he falls in love. And that's when he wants to marry. So in some cases, even if the person is not the marrying kind, he still married that other person. I mean, my ex-partner is not necessarily the marrying kind. He jumps in and out of relationships, cheats, all kinds of things. But when he was ready to marry, he married her. He didn't marry me. So that is something to note. So the shift from short-term mating strategy to long-term partner preferences is likely the reason why a partner may marry someone else. All right, so hopefully you were able to gain insight from this video discussion. Please like, subscribe, and visit. So please like the video, hit the notification bell for more discussions. I am re-uploading all of my audios, so I needed to make some changes to them. You can visit my website for more content at reginayfavors.com. If you want to send me an email, you can send an email, reginayfavors@yahoo.com. Please also purchase the book. It's going to come out in spring 2021. So I had to make changes to my book to update it, and I also updated the title. So the original title was Bait, Hook, and Switch, Confessions of a Rebound Girl, and I have updated the title to Toxic Encounters: Why People Pursue Rebound Relationships. So right now I'm still basically editing it, and I want to make it available in spring 2021. So thank you very much for visiting my channel, and I am Regina Y. Favors. Have a great day.